Welcome to Castle Talk, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. I'm Mackenzie, and please introduce yourself. Tonight we're talking to...
I'm Rebecca Anne Nguyen.
Amazing. All right. Well, Rebecca has been nominated for an Audie, and we are just thrilled to have you here today. I know you're a Milwaukee-based novelist, and this is all around your book, The 23rd Hero. To kind of start, what inspired you to write The 23rd Hero, and how did the concept of kind of time traveling and climate change come to you?
I started writing The 23rd Hero when I was going through a divorce. So I was in a very dark place and I needed an escape. And I think writing became this safe space, this place where I could believe in love again. I could have fun. I could travel. At the time, I had my boys. I have two sons and they were really little. So I was a single parent. I was on my own with these two little kids. And so my only chance to travel the world or travel through time was in a world of my own creation. So it was sort of born out of a dark time, but it's actually it was an uplifting process for me to work on the story. And it's a very hopeful and uplifting story.
Amazing. Yeah. I know kind of learning more about your background as a playwright, as a playwright, how did that influence your approach to writing fiction?
Oh, I love that question. It definitely influenced, it probably influences all of my writing coming from that theatrical background. I love writing dialogue. Dialogue comes very easily to me. Actually, the entire story naturally comes in the dialogue and what are people saying to each other, and that's just naturally how I tell stories. And then he said this and she said that, and so what I had to learn to do, because most novels are not pure dialogue, there's a few out there, but the beauty of a novel is that you can have narrative and description and interiority of the characters and their thoughts and everything. So I had to learn to not just use dialogue, use it as one tool of other tools in order to tell the story. So that was a great learning experience for me.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of influenced your creative process in just kind of where you wanted to go with the story to begin with?
Yeah, I think so. I felt like I shouldn't be using so much dialogue. So I sort of had this idea that it's a novel, you're not allowed, and that's not true. So I had to, have too much and then not enough, walk it back and play around with it until I found a good balance. Um, but but that led me to actually work on a play for the first time in a long time, because I said I have this instinct and this desire to write people talking to each other. So why not just lean into that? And then I ended up writing a full-length play
Yeah.
while I was on the break from the novel.
That's amazing. I know one of my questions was, I know like I said, you're based in Milwaukee. Do you think there was anything that influenced your creative work, kind of living there and having just some ground roots there?
Oh, that's an interesting. I don't know if I've thought about that's so funny. So I left, I grew up around here. I left when I was 18 and I was gone for about 15 years. So I think the places I lived before I returned, I came back once I had kids. The places I lived when I was elsewhere probably have more influence on the work. I spent time in Asia. I was on the West Coast. I was in Miami. A very short time in upstate New York, which is even colder than Wisconsin, I found out. So I think that the traveling is influenced this story too, especially the time that I spent in Asia. Sloane, the hero of the 23rd Hero, spends the entire part two of the book when she's training. She is in an undisclosed location in Asia. And a lot of the people that she meets are from different countries in Asia. And so she's half Khmer and her family is Cambodian. And so, yeah, I spent months in Cambodia, and so I was bringing that into the work more than Milwaukee. But Milwaukee is a great place to write, because in the winter there's not much else to do. It's very cold.
That's so fair. That's so exciting though. I'm sure all of those experiences just kind of wrapped into one. I know for me, the themes are just incredibly timely all throughout the 23rd Hero. Do you think you ever like how did you really balance kind of weaving between like this meaningful message of climate change and still kind of wanting to make sure it's entertaining, if you will, or just really kind of gripping for the reader?
Yeah, it's very tough because it's a climate anxiety is real, right? It's a terrifying world that we live in today, and this book starts in the near future when things have gotten even worse. So it was important to me to make sure I honored how important and serious that is. But the book itself is an adventure and it's a love story. And I really wanted to balance that with hope. And I also, it's a fantasy in a way, because the idea is if we had a do-over as a race, as a species, what would we change? What would we do differently knowing what we know now? And in the book, the heroes are going back in time to sort of reset and uninvent all of our most harmful inventions, and stop these horrible practices from becoming commonplace, and stop corporations from forming. And so my hope is, I think that in creating this picture of how we might solve all of this, we can hang on to a little bit of hope, because I think we need that to keep trying. We can't, if everything is doom and gloom, we sort of give up, and it's like, why bother? So it's not a realistic, obviously it's science fiction. So it's not, don't come to the book as reference material for like how to save the planet. But it's that hope that is my hope that people will latch onto and hang on to, and as we try to figure out how to solve for this in the real world.
Yeah, that was a beautiful answer. I think that's everyone could take something from that, absolutely. I guess kind of going into more of the writing process and just the insight on that. I kind of know, I feel like a lot of authors talk about how characters almost take on a life of their own, or they kind of like take that from you. Do you think you had any surprises when you were writing, and kind of building the characters' lives and whatnot?
Oh, yes. Like, I love that question, and it's very true. I definitely had surprises, and there was definitely times when it does feel like the characters are sort of slipping into the driver's seat and you're just along for the ride, which could be okay or not so much. I mean, I read reviews sometimes where, like book reviews, where a criticism is you let the characters overtake the novel, and this idea that the author always needs to be in the driver's seat and guiding. But I think in the early days when you're drafting, I think it's great I did a lot of just sort of back and forth dialogue between me and the characters, even before I started working on actual scenes, just to get to know them and interview them in a way. And yeah, they took things in wild directions. There's surprises all the time, where it's sort of like, I think Bastian is Sloane's love interest in the 23rd Hero. And I think this piece of dialogue belongs to him. So I have him saying it. And then I'll have this epiphany, something about it's not working. And then I realize, oh my gosh, no, he doesn't say that. She says it. She says it to him. And then it breaks open. So yeah, there's tons of surprises throughout. It's really, that
Yeah,
part's
that's
really
amazing. Yeah, I'm really curious, just kind of off the top of my head, what did that look like for you in kind of this interview process with those characters? What did that kind of come about?
That it was probably because I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm coming from a nonfiction world. So I've always been a writer and a playwright and worked in theater, but I hadn't written fiction. It was totally new to me. I didn't really know where to start. And I also knew from going to conservatory and studying music and studying acting that if I get too much instruction, I get overwhelmed and I like shut down. Like my creativity will just totally shut down. So I said, it's okay if I'm bad. I'm new. I can suck. That is allowed. And so I just started, playing around, not knowing what I was doing at all. So I spent like a good 3 months just kind of um in this sort of like collaboration with these characters, getting to know them, throwing them in a scene together and seeing what happened. And that's sort of where I started to find those seeds, with Bastian especially. He was always really clear to me from the beginning. I knew exactly who he was. I had a whole like a backstory. and I understood his personality and his psychology really deeply. Sloane changed. She was very different in the beginning. In the beginning of the story, as it is today, she's really insecure and she lacks confidence. And part of the story is her coming into her own and learning to be the hero that the world needs her to be. But in early drafts, she had an anger problem, which could have had something to do with the fact that I was going through a divorce at the time. Um, but
Never that.
yeah, it's difficult to make an angry woman sympathetic. And I didn't want her to be likable. So that, she still gets angry, but that's not her main problem.
Absolutely. No, I think that's an eloquent way of putting that. I guess kind of moving into your nomination after everything has come about and whatnot. Obviously a huge congratulations on that. That is such a amazing experience. Obviously hard work put on display. Do you think obviously kind of narrating so many characters in an audiobook, what was the most challenging character? I know you said you worked with kind of like someone to help you with narrating different voices and finding different personalities and all of that. Did you think you were expecting to take on any certain challenges and what really did?
It was so challenging. I mean, everything about it, I just audiobook, even without different dialects, just recording the thing physically is like, I thought I had the right amount of respect for audiobook narrators and like coming from an acting background, and I love listening to audiobooks, and I had no idea. I mean, I knew it'd be grueling, but it was like my throat was on fire. I had to do like text to voice for my kids in the evenings. I had to be like, go to bed, like with the robot, because I couldn't even say one word. I couldn't speak.
Oh my gosh.
So that part, like just the physical stamina part was difficult. I never thought that I would record the audiobook myself when I was writing. In my mind, I had these big dreams that there'd be some, I don't know, Claire Danes is going to narrate the audiobook or something. So when it came time and we realized it was going to be me, I was kind of kicking myself because there's over half the book is dialogue. There's over 30 voiced characters. And on top of that, they're from all over the world because she's in, no spoilers, but she's in this training. She's getting trained for a mission, and the crew is like United Nations. I mean, they're literally from every country. They're from all over. So I had to do Swedish accent, Australian, French, different like flavors of French. I'm forgetting some hard ones in there too. There's so many. It's easy to forget. But the hardest part was when you had someone who was they're the same, native language, they're the same gender, they're the same race, they're the same age. How do you make them sound different? And then for me, I'm a woman, and if I'm playing a man, and it's a 3 or 4 different men who happen to be white, and they're all gay, and they're all in their 20s. How do you make them sound distinct from each other? It's really hard.
Absolutely. Do you think narrating your own book I know you kind of said you were kicking yourself a little bit because there was so much dialogue. Do you think, despite that, were there other changes on how you viewed or understood your own story after narrating it?
That's such a good question. Oh my gosh. Maybe that it works better as an audiobook than it does on the page, because which is just, that shows me that where I have room to grow as a writer, I think, because some people who have listened to the audiobook understood more of my intention, I think, when I mean, maybe that's kind of cheating in a way. It's like you can, with your voice, you can really set the mood, and you can do things with pacing that you can't do when the reader's reading on the page. But I think so. It was fun. It was I've always sort of seen the story on a screen. Like I think it's meant to be made into a series or a film or a series of films. And so it was cool doing the audiobook to take it that next step closer to to cinema. And to actually, yeah, hear the voices and find those moments. And I really wish too that I had gone through the exercise of reading it out loud before I had finished, because I definitely found, I mean, typos, of course, always still finding typos, but also, yeah, little moments or continuity errors or something I would have liked to have added. So next time on my next project, I'm going to record the audiobook myself just for myself to then go back and listen. Because I think that's a great way to catch things you might not otherwise catch.
Totally. You have a leg up there for next time, absolutely. I guess a personal question, was there any particular character whose voice clicked for you that you really just adored through like through and through?
I was really happy with where Bastion ended up in the audiobook. That one was super tricky because he there's a lot of description of his voice, and his voice is one of the things that attracts Sloane to him. I mean, there's paragraphs about his, the quality of his voice and how he sounds like he's on the cusp of laryngitis, or like it's a scratchy voice and it's very specific. And so when I worked with Eric Singer, who's the vocal coach I worked with, we talked about how I didn't have to create these characters in a realistic sense. I just needed them to be believable within the world of the audiobook. And what that meant was, instead of like trying to do my voice really low, it just meant that Bastion's voice had to be low relative to Sloane's, or relative to Eleanor's when he's talking to Eleanor. So like when I'm Sloane, I'm like talking a little bit up here in my higher register. And when I'm Bastion, I'm like down here. But that's still my voice that I use every day, right? So it's as we're listening, it's just sort of the relativity of the voices instead of, what might be an actual male sounding voice.
Totally. That is such a cool process to hear on the back end. That's so exciting. I guess what was your initial reaction when you found out you were nominated alongside some of the big names in the Audie Awards?
Total disbelief. I really thought, honestly, I thought it was a mistake. And I waited for a few days, like 2, 3 days after checking my email for like them to write me back and say, we've made a mistake. We're so sorry. It was a clerical error. Because I'm really proud of Castlebridge and of we're the only indie publisher represented in this category. Everyone else is literally a celebrity, or they're celebrity backed. It's like a celebrity imprint or a New York Times bestselling author. And then there's us. So it's incredible that we're there. I don't know anyone at the APA. I don't know who listened. I don't know who said yes. And I'm just so grateful and blown away that it just gives me hope. And I hope it gives everyone hope that it's not always about whether you have a big name or who you know or whatever accolades. Like I have none. And here I am like in this group with Whoopi Goldberg and Salman Rushdie. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I'm still pinching myself.
Oh, that is so sweet. Oh my gosh, the energy is so contagious. Do you see yourself continuing to narrate any of your audiobooks in the future, or do you think this is maybe like one and done? We'll see. What's your take on that?
I think I'd love to, depending on what happens and, who's involved, that people might have other ideas about who they'd like to narrate. I mean, hopefully I'll finish another book that has to happen first. But yeah, I'd love to. It was really challenging, but it was really, really fun. And it's great to sort of have that vision in your mind and then try to bring it out in voice and with recording, and we did some fun effects, like sound effects, when we had like overhead speakers. And there's one scene where a comedic scene with a cell phone, with an old school Nokia cell phone. So we got to do like one of those old school ringtones. So yeah, it sort of felt almost like making a radio play. So it was really fun. Yeah, I'd love to do it again.
That's amazing. I guess to wrap up a little bit, of course, the one question, if you could go back in time, maybe to your younger self as a writer, or just even prior to the story beginning, do you think you would give yourself any advice, or even to like an aspiring writer or someone who wants to start, narrating their own audiobooks?
Yes, I love the question. Great questions. I think the advice for my younger self and aspiring writers is, don't compare your work in progress to other people's finished work. Most of what we read, pick any book on the shelf. The novelist or the writer could have been working on that for a decade, 30 years, or 5 years. I mean, and then when you're getting started, it's very tempting to compare your sludge to their diamond, but their diamond is only that way because they have been blood, sweat, tears, and many, 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 many years and lots of feedback. And so what I've learned in having the opportunity to work with other writers and be in workshop with them is that even the people, you know, you think of someone that you admire so much and you think that they're flawless. I think of Jennifer Egan. Everyone starts with sludge. And maybe the sludge is like less sludgy as the decades pass and you can get where you're going faster, but not always. And so wonderful, wonderful writers produce crap. And sometimes that's how we have to get to the good stuff. And that's totally acceptable. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it doesn't feel great when you know it's bad. And you just, it's the calendar days, it's your butt in the seat, it's the time doing the work. And I still struggle with this, but breathing through that discomfort, that muscle, I think is more important for a writer than talent or being able to put a sentence together. That part is easy. That part you can learn or fix, but the ability to withstand your own suckiness, and to keep going in the face of that.
Absolutely. Well, this was such a time to learn more about you. I absolutely adore you. I am so excited to see where this takes you. And do you have any other upcoming projects you can share, or we're gonna wait and see?
Yeah, I'm working on a romantic comedy. It's definitely still in the stages I was just describing. So a work in progress, and who knows how long it will take me to finish, but I'm trying to enjoy the work while I can. And then in the meantime, yeah, 23rd Hero and the audiobook are available.
Amazing. Well, we are wishing you the best of luck, and I know I'm very excited to see where this takes you, and hopefully hear more from you soon.
Thank you so much, MacKenzie. This has been great.
Thank you so much. Same to you.